Hi, everyone. Welcome to this version of our Fit-Tastic Partner Spotlight. I'm really happy to have Aubrey Neal here with me today. We're going to have a conversation about eating during the holidays. So as a reminder, I'm Shelly Summar. I am the program manager for Weighing In, a program at Children's Mercy, working to prevent or promote healthy lifestyles for kids and families in the Kansas City area. So thank you, Aubrey, for joining us. Aubrey is the dietitian and lifestyle coach at Children's Mercy's Employee Health Clinic. I had the privilege of meeting her in our Employee Wellness Committee meetings and really love the tips that she's been sharing with employees and thought maybe our families would like to hear them as well. So thanks for joining me today, Aubrey. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm Aubrey. I am a registered dietitian and I have been one for about 3.5 years. So still just kind of a newbie dietitian, but I've got to do lots of different experiences in that short time. I previously worked at a federally qualified health clinic where I got to work with all age populations. And now I work in corporate wellness and get to work with some of the most awesome people that get to work with kids and also have families of their own. So I am also a lifestyle coach. And then I have a really big passion for prediabetes and diabetes as well. And I'm super glad to be here.
Well, great. Thank you so much. Thanks for that introduction. So we were talking just a little bit. So we've talked a little bit in our employee wellness committee meetings, and then you and I have talked a little bit. And I'm really, again, happy to have you here with us to talk about eating through the holidays because, as you know, in talking with families, eating during the holidays is really, really challenging or can be, especially when you throw a pandemic on top of it. So what are the things that you hear you might suggest, really maybe starting high level to help people maintain healthy habits during the holidays?
Yeah. So a couple big things that have changed for a lot of families that I've worked with this year is that they're not getting together the same way that they were last year. And so that has presented there being a lot of leftovers. We're still kind of making those meals, trying to make the most of it, but then there's leftovers because maybe we only had 2, 3, 4, 5 people at home to eat instead of the normal 10, 12, or 15 people eating that meal. And so what happens is those leftovers become, not just the holiday, but it becomes a holidays of days. And sometimes, that whole week of eating those really rich, delicious, high calorie, dense foods for days and days and days. And the, focusing on nutrition kind of starts to go out of the window. And after that slippery slope of the week, sometimes that then leads into more weeks. And what I often hear from families is that it feels like the holiday starts at Halloween and goes until Valentine's Day. And it's just kind of a blur of really eating treats or break room food or leftovers, and that their meal planning kind of goes out the window. And I always say, well, after Valentine's Day, then you have Girl Scout cookie season, and it just keeps going. So holidays aren't going to go anywhere. So we kind of have to figure out, how do we strategize to eat healthy around those holidays? Holidays only make up about 7% of your entire year. And so it's figuring out the time in between. Even if you do celebrate with multiple families or friend groups or, via Zoom meetings now with each other, it's about figuring out how to plug in nutrition in the in-between times. And a really helpful tip that I find a lot of families can use is by using a meal planning template. Meaning, instead of going, every day that dreaded text or call of what's for dinner, using a template that you can put repeatedly each week by doing themed nights. So maybe that's slow cooker Sundays, meatless Mondays, taco Tuesdays, something that you can repeat, especially in these really busy seasons, that makes making a grocery list really easy and also still gets you to prioritize that nutrition outside of maybe that one holiday or that couple days that you celebrate the holiday. So just using something that you can kind of repeat and tweak each week or get something new each week. And one of my favorite resources to use for that is a website called Yumly, and we can put it in the description of the video here. But it's a free meal planning resource where you can take recipes from your favorite recipe websites, any website that you use to get recipes from, drag it in there, and it will make you a grocery list. So then you don't have to read through the entire recipe or kind of mark what you have or write it down. And it'll even put it in your Instacart. So you can get it picked up or delivered groceries really easy too.
Excellent. So the idea of a holiday versus holiday season, I think, is really key and always challenging. So I love the idea of taking advantage of some of the technology that already exists and using that to your advantage. I also love the idea of theme night. I find that at our house we get stuck with, like the same recipes over and over. And if you take that idea of a taco night, it doesn't always have to be tacos. It could be something, in that
Right.
same category. So I really
Taco salad, burritos, build your own burrito bowl.
Well, okay, so that makes me think of the other part of adding nutrition to the holidays, and that's the fruits and vegetables. So I frequently, and so in my history of being a dietitian, I have often heard families talk about it's really easy to come up with the main dish or the entree,
Mm-hmm.
and then the carbohydrate side, like a bread or pasta or rice. But what's frequently missing are those fruits and or vegetables. What are you hearing, or what are you saying to the families that you might work with right now about what are some strategies that they can use to make sure that the fruit or the vegetable doesn't get missed?
Yeah, doing like a meatless day out of the week can really help because it puts the focus on the other things on the dish. Another one that I like to say, or a theme night that is really great to stick, is Around the World Wednesday, or different world dishes that maybe include fruits or vegetables that maybe you haven't tried, have never heard of, or have never prepared in different ways. Kind of gets out of your comfort zone. And then also using like seasonal produce guides just to see what's actually in season. I know that we live in a world where we kind of have access to a lot of fruits and vegetables all the time, even if they are or aren't out of season. But if you've ever tasted, fruits when they're in season versus when they're not, you can definitely tell a difference in quality and taste. And so using a seasonal produce guide not only tells you what's in season, but it might just inspire you to kind of stay accountable with those different fruits and vegetables and create a good rotating menu instead of always serving grapes or peas or those go-to vegetables. It might help spice it up a little bit.
That's an excellent point, because I was talking to somebody recently. It was about watermelon, and you could find a watermelon in the store, and they had gotten it, but it did not taste anything like watermelon that you might get during the summer. So you make an excellent point about making sure you're really looking for the things that are in season. And I love the idea of trying new things, especially right now. From the same person who I was talking to about watermelon, we were also talking about pomegranates. Pomegranates are in season right now. And one of the challenges I've noticed is people don't always know what to do with new foods like that. Like, how do you cut a pomegranate? What is it that you actually eat in the pomegranate? And so, does that guide that you just recommended, you said seasonal food guide?
Yep.
Does that include information like how to use or prepare or cut those things that might be new to people?
It does give some information about like the flavors and different flavors that you would maybe want to pair it with. One tip that I always give, especially when you're trying a new food, is to pair a known food with a non-known food, an unknown food, or a known texture or a liked texture with an unknown texture, especially if you're working, with kiddos, but also with adults. That a lot of times the things that prevent us from trying foods is we're worried that we won't like it or we won't like the texture. And so then doing things like pomegranate, maybe sticking that in a salad with lots of other things that that you like, to be able to kind of have that known texture versus non. And then same thing, a lot of people have never had squash, sweet potatoes, spinach. Those are some in-season veggies right now. Putting them in chili, soups, rice bowls, things like that to kind of help balance that food that you do like and food that maybe is brand new to you.
Yeah, that's a great way to think about that. I've heard with kids in particular using the no thank you bite. Like you have a new food that's coming out and you have one try of that, and then there's a no thank you afterwards. But you've probably heard this before as well. Just because you don't like it the first time doesn't mean you're not going to like it the fifth time or the 10th time that you try something. And I think part of the point you were making there by adding vegetables to different things that you're used to, for example, the soups or the stews and that sort of thing, it may change the taste enough for people to actually enjoy it in those things as well. So I love those ideas, including them in new things, especially the ones that are in season. Roasting has also been one of those things that I've heard people have been doing a lot more of. And for me in particular, it totally changes the taste of vegetables and makes them far more appealing from my standpoint.
That crunchy outside texture is a good tip to kind of try it in different ways. A lot of people don't prefer, like a steamed veggie has a little bit earthier taste to it. And with roasting, you can definitely add in some different spices, get a little bit different texture. And yeah, a lot of my clients, whenever we're working on bigger variety, I always say kind of work backwards, cook it a little more than you'd want to, then cook it a little less, and kind of see where you really like the texture and the taste and the flavor.
Those are great ideas. Have you heard feedback from them? Have your clients come back and said, I tried this and I really loved your idea to do X?
Absolutely, especially the roasting in the oven, cooking it kind of a little past doneness. A lot of people that are like, oh, I would have never tried broccoli or cauliflower because I don't like that texture. Or asparagus is one too, that when we get it to, what if it was kind of crunchy, or what if it was more familiar and savory tasting, that they taste broccoli whenever it's a little charred. And then they're like, oh, wow, I actually do like the taste of broccoli, but it was kind of this squishy steamed broccoli that I kept thinking of that was holding me back from trying it in different ways.
That was exactly my problem with broccoli.
Yeah.
So that's great. I love hearing those ideas and that they work for other people as well. So we've talked a little bit about holidays and holiday gatherings and the challenges. So during this pandemic, we're not together as much, and so we don't have as many, I guess, potlucks at work, or we're not going to be able to go to as many parties as we might at other times. But we still want to enjoy those things and holiday themed treats and those sorts of I don't know, things that many people think of during the holidays, that they want to have what my grandmother made, or these delicious, really decadent desserts or treats. How can we stay mindful about health and still enjoy this holiday season?
Yeah, that's a really good question, especially since maybe we don't get to have dinner with grandma, or we don't get to have dinner with mom. Of how do I still feel connected and, celebrate in a way that feels celebratory to me, even though I'm not doing all the same things. And, that is kind of comes down to a really good opportunity this year to also start new traditions. And so maybe really evaluating what are the dishes that we make at our, Christmas, whatever holiday that you're celebrating, dinner that I really enjoy, that I want to pass on to my kids, that I want to make, that I like cooking. And maybe that is the mashed potatoes or the noodles or the Brussels sprouts or the carrots or the corn or whatever it might be. And then what are the dishes that we really maybe just make out of habit? I have a lot of clients that say, I always am responsible for the mashed potatoes and I don't even like them. Or I always have to bring the Hawaiian rolls and I don't even like those, or I don't even eat them, or maybe my kiddos don't like them, or then they're just sitting around in my house for weeks and weeks afterwards. So to be able to kind of take those dishes of, okay, I know we really like the pineapple honey glazed ham and we really want to keep that tradition, but then maybe also adding on and trying something brand new. Something that I recommend to a lot of my clients and even use in my own personal life is maybe picking up a cookbook or a recipe that you would have never tried before, and taking that time, maybe just with you and your family, maybe your kiddos, and trying a different cooking method or trying a new food and creating your own traditional dish that maybe swaps out for one that's been carried on for years and years and years, that maybe isn't one that anybody really liked that much anyway. But kind of taking this time to evaluate what are the ones that we want to keep and maybe what are some new traditions that we want to start, because there is no better time since not very many people might be actually trying the dish. So you have a lot of opportunity to perfect it and maybe try some different veggies or different sides, maybe a salad. That's one that me and my husband are always working on, is how can we make some different new creative salads or combine different veggies that don't always taste great on the first try, but you have a lot of opportunity to perfect it now.
So you've shared a number of different things that I think are really valuable for the people that might be watching this as we post it. So one of the key takeaways I've heard you talk about is using technology. So you mentioned Yumly as a website, and I assume they have an app maybe to help with meal planning, grocery shopping, making it easier on yourself as you think about what are we going to eat over the next week or more, and using the seasonal food guide to help us find new seasonal foods that maybe we haven't tried before, and we want to begin exploring new things now that we're at home. Maybe we have a little bit more time to think about some of those things. So I love that. You mentioned trying foods in new ways, like roasting, cooking a little bit more, cooking a little bit less, and trying new traditions. So taking the favorites, now we might have an opportunity to change them a little bit, maybe start some new habits based on finding some new seasonal foods. What else do you hear, or what else, if anything, would be helpful for the families that might be watching us and looking for new things?
Yeah. I think that you did a great job summarizing all of those resources much more eloquently, I feel like, than I have. That was a great wrap up of those. And I think the thing at the top of everybody's list is the treats, the desserts, the sweets, the candies, the fudge, the cookies, all of the things that come with the winter months. And people get really worried. You start to hear kind of the talk about it starting with, Halloween and then going all through the fall and winter months. And one of the biggest tips that I always talk with families about is going into the holiday season, trying not to get really worked up about it, or, the bigger deal that we make about worrying about that day of Christmas, and really remembering that it's just one day. And, maybe that potluck at work or your kiddo's school party is still just one day. And maybe there are treats that you wouldn't normally have there, or maybe are not the most nutritious, but to be able to, put in perspective, okay, those things are kind of maybe a little bit less in my control, and those are going to be treats that we're going to have. And then on the days where we do make things at home, maybe I can make those a little bit more nutritious. Maybe we can try swapping some ingredients. Maybe we can make some peppermint bark, and maybe we can add some nuts or some seeds or something that kind of balances that out. And being able to kind of make peace with those days where we have a little bit less control, that maybe there's a work potluck, and then really prioritizing or taking advantage of the times when you do have control over those foods, or, making the best out of the time that you have and the resources that you have when you can, and then being able to really enjoy the holiday and then get right back to it the next day.
Well, I love that idea of, and I hadn't thought about it this way until you mentioned it, but holidays are only 7% of the year. So yeah. I think if we keep that in mind, or if others keep that in mind, and you think about, I can enjoy the holiday, just don't let it drag into a week or a month or the season, like you mentioned, from Halloween through Valentine's. I think it makes it a lot easier to sort of bite off something you can chew, meaning enjoy the day, have whatever you want. Don't get too concerned about that, but think about, what do I do the next day? How do I bring nutrition back into what we're doing almost immediately afterwards? And so I love the tips, and I love the websites that you're giving, because those were ones I wasn't familiar with, and I think might be helpful for our families, and can include those on our Fit-Tastic resources. So I know you've seen this. I'm going to mention this for anyone else who happens to be watching at fittastic.org. That's Fit-Tastic.org, we have some resources that families might find helpful, both as they're staying at home from a nutrition and a physical activity standpoint. And that's not something we talked about today, but that is something that families should keep in mind, ensuring that they're getting adequate or some physical activity during this time as it starts to get colder and we'll want to get outside less, finding ways to be physically active. But we'll add those resources to our Fit-Tastic resources as well to make it easier for people to link to that. We'll include those resources that you mentioned in the notes about this video, again, making it easy for families to access that information. And then I'd also direct people to our Pinterest pages and YouTube channel that has some additional tips related to things like using foods that may not be familiar to people. We were talking about pomegranates, and my first time cutting a pomegranate was a bit challenging. And thankfully, I had a video to show me what I needed to do, because when you look at it, it's like, oh my gosh, what do you do with this thing? And what part of it is, what part of it are you really supposed to eat? But we actually added that to our Thanksgiving menu this year.
Yeah.
And it was delicious. And we just had them as a side. So instead of your traditional cranberry sauce, we really just had pomegranate seeds. Super easy, cut them myself, which made it a little bit less expensive, because if you buy it already cut, they can be kind of pricey. Anyway, now I digress. And it's so easy to do that. So again, thank you so much, Aubrey, for joining me today. I really love the tips. Is there, again, anything else you'd like to share before we wrap things up?
Thank you for having me. Now, I think just the big takeaway too of just remembering going into this, a lot of the way that we behave around food depends on the way that we talk to ourselves about food. And so remembering that it is just 7% of the year and we can enjoy it and really focus on optimizing your nutrition and your physical activity outside of those days. And you're still going to make a really big impact in your health.
I think that's a great way to end this segment. So thanks so much for joining me. And thanks so much for being there for the employees at Children's Mercy, but also being willing to share this information with the families that we serve through Weighing In. I hope that you'll be willing to join me again.
Absolutely. It was an honor to be on here.
Thanks so much. And I say to everyone watching this, enjoy the holidays.